Today we're taking a look at some NHL offseason trade and free agent rumors concerning teams like the Vegas Golden Knights, the New York Islanders, the Seattle Kraken, and the Ottawa Senators. Plus, we're going to recap all of last night's playoff action. We have some more fines issued, injury updates, some prospect signings, and some big news concerning the 2023 World Junior Championships. And that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to discuss here today. First up, I want to get started with the news from Hockey Canada and the IIHF confirming today that the 2023 World Junior Championships will indeed be held here in Atlantic, Canada. Of course, pretty close to my hometown, between Moncton and Halifax will be the joint host. Of course, I don't live directly there. I'm in Fredericton, but still, it's not too far, close enough that I should be able to, it's a short drive to be able to get to some games, which is certainly exciting for myself. I'll certainly be looking to get tickets to go. Obviously, Moncton's is super close for me, and they've got a brand new arena there for the Moncton Wildcats, which is their main tenant. Actually, I was just there this past week for a game, and it was a beautiful facility. So it's great to see the World Juniors come to Atlanta, Canada. I know some of the other cities across Canada that were bidding to host this event have a little bit of a bigger city, bigger arena, but it looks like they were going for a little bit more of a smaller setting. I think they were more concerned with having a little bit more of a atmosphere where the rinks can be full. Especially, got to remember, in Canada, when the host, some of the games when Canada's not participating, sometimes they don't get the greatest attendance. Overall, they tend to do very well. But, if you're going to have a game of, let's just say Finland against Sweden, for example, you might not get the same kind of crowd as you would for like Canada against the U.S. And of course, at this point in time, we know that Russia is not going to be able to host or participate based on all the sanctions placed against them, which is why Canada is hosting this event, because it was originally supposed to be a Russian-held event. So great to see the Atlantic region here, my part of the country, get a chance to host this event. It's been in this region before, but it's been a while. And of course, the St. John area, St. John Sea Dogs, are hosting the Memorial Cup as well. So over the next 6 months, there's a couple of major tournaments, between my home province and then the region, which is awesome to see and going to be great for fans like myself that live nearby. Of course, we saw lots of more great playoff action last night. Of course, was night 3 of the NHL playoffs. We had 4 series participate with their second game. We saw the Oilers come back and win game 2 to even up the series. Mike Smith gets a shutout, a 6-0 victory over the Los Angeles Kings. We saw the Carolina Hurricanes take a 2-0 lead over the Bruins with a big 5-2 victory. Boston was hit with a couple of fines based on some activity in that game. Brad Marchand for slashing and Derek Forbort for high sticking were both fined $5,000. Andrei Svechnikov absolutely laid a monstrous hit on Bruins defenseman Hampus Lindholm. I watched the hit numerous times. It's completely clean. It is not late. He gets some square in the chest. I feel really bad for Lindholm, who was certainly slow to get up and very wobbly when he did, and I believe it's already confirmed he will not play Game 3 with what is believed to be a concussion. Like, you could tell the immediate effects and impact. It was a very violent hit, but theoretically within the rules. If you want to have hitting in hockey, that's something that you're going to have to live with. Unfortunately, sometimes you see bad outcomes on clean plays in that regard. You also saw the Minnesota Wild come back and even up their series against St. Louis with a big 6-2 victory. Kirill Kaprizov comes out with a hat trick. So certainly, a changing of the tides there. Will be interesting to see what happens when the series shifts back to St. Louis for games 3 and 4. And then we saw the Lightning even things up with the Leafs with a 5-3 victory. At one point, it was 5-1, looking like the Lightning had things wrapped up, but they did kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit, and the Leafs got a couple late ones to kind of make it a little bit more interesting. But 5-3 is where things finished in that regard. Of course, I don't know if we're going to see any lineup changes or not between those two teams, but I would think after a couple of games in the series shifting back to Tampa, especially on Toronto's side where they've been kind of juggling. They'll have Kyle Clifford available again. Will he get back in the lineup? Will Wayne Simmons come out? There was a lot of bad penalties taken in that game, which was a big part of it. And I don't want to hear anybody complaining about the refs, in my opinion. The refereeing has been, at least, but you can say it's been consistent. They are calling things tightly. There's been all kinds of penalties, but if you look at the history and the stats over the last 4 or 5 years, the penalties have gone up when the playoffs have started. So this is something everybody should be expecting, and players should be adapting here and being ready here, and I guess adjusting after the first couple games to kind of get used to what's called and what's not. A lot of things are, they're clear-cut penalties, and they're getting called. They're just not being let go. So we will see. Of course, tonight we have another 4 games going as the series continues to shift from night to night. We get the Pens versus the Rangers, which will feature Louis Dominguez as starting goalie. Casey DeSmith is officially out. So, of course, Jerry and DeSmith both down now. DeSmith was listed with a lower body injury, believed to be a groin. So I don't know. It looks like it was more than just cramping when he left the game the other night in double overtime. And Alex Dorio, the former St. John Sea Dog goalie in junior, has been called up to be the backup for the Penguins, who's been playing in the American Hockey League. Of course, they're going to be without Rickard Rakell, who appears to be out with a concussion after getting a major monstrous hit himself from Ryan Lindgren in the other game. So they'll be without him. Zucker could be back. Apparently, he's listed as a game-time decision and did participate in practice earlier. Of course, we get the Panthers against the Capitals as well, where the Panthers try to even things up and kind of get that one turned around. Tom Wilson will be out tonight for Washington. So you would think with Wilson not being there, the Panthers might play a little bit different. When you have a player of that magnitude who's not only skilled with the size and the hits he can throw, I'm sure that it does have an impact on how they feel out there, and maybe they'll play a little bit looser and be more offensive tonight. We will see if Wilson, how much impact that'll have on both sides. Of course, the Avs and Predators continue to play the game number 2 tonight. Apparently, as the Predators went to practice this morning, the Avalanche had left the score of 7-2 up on the scoreboard from the last game, so they were not real pleased with that. A bit of a savage move on the part of the Avalanche to kind of rub it in. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite them, because I am a firm believer in karma, and I as much as you can get the tactics that you see against each other, you just don't want to have that come back to bite you. So we'll see where that goes tonight. If the Predators can do a better job in slowing down that Avalanche freight train. And then, of course, the Flames and the Stars do battle as well. We saw the Flames with a 1-0 victory, a very tightly contested game in the first one. We'll see where things go here tonight, if there can be a little bit more goals on the board. I mean, as much as it was a tightly contested, entertaining game, it was still a good game and lots of fisticuffs thrown. But we'd like to see a few more goals for sure, based on just, my opinion of what's more entertaining, and that's offense. But we'll see. All fans think alike in that regard. We also had a few signings today as well. The Columbus Blue Jackets have signed prospect left winger Mikael Piata, who's one of the top players out of the Liga in Finland this year. It was a 2020 4th round selection, so he'll make the jump and join things here in North America next season. And the Rangers have signed one of their prospects from the 2021 draft, and its 3rd round pick, center iceman out of Moose Jaw, WHL, Ryder Kortskak. So another pretty solid looking prospect. The WHL seems to be another area too that's loaded for the next 2022 draft, with a high percentage of prospects highly ranked coming from that league, more so than the other junior locations around Canada and other parts of the world. Now, jumping into the rumor section of today's video, I want to start here first with the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, of course, not all we're going to talk about are rumor related, but we did see a lot of players and coaches speaking to the media here that I wanted to discuss. Of course, first up was head coach Pete DeBoer, who maintains that he still believes heavily in this group, thinks injuries was a large part of the reason why they didn't succeed further. They were not all that far out of the playoffs. Feels like if they could have been a little healthier, they could have gotten in. And then, of course, you never know what can happen from there. And I wouldn't completely disagree with that. Injuries certainly played a major role in Vegas's, results this year. I think that's definitely fair to say. Indicates that he does indeed have a contract for next year, and is hoping he'll be back to coach next year. He certainly wants to be, but at the same time expects there, because of the lack of success, and even though injuries are apparently part of the problem, which is everybody can agree on, they fully expect the organization to do like a head-to-toe review of everything. And, some people suspect that major changes could be coming. We do know that they're going to have no choice but to make some changes based on their cap situation alone. They're way over the cap if everybody were to be healthy. So you got to expect at least a couple of changes. On top of that, there's usually at least some changes every year anyways. And I know there was a recent article I was looking at as well talking about some of the potential players that could be moved, which we'll get into here in a moment. But the other real part of the speaking to the media for the players that I really want to focus on was Captain Mark Stone. We get to learn a lot more about his situation. We know that Mark Stone missed a lot of time this year with a back injury, came back late in the season, which was surprising in a way. But, it's one of those things where they're kind of looking at things probably and saying, we don't know that we're getting in the playoffs. It's far from a guarantee. And he tried to come back and help the team, even though he probably shouldn't have, to be honest, based on what he was saying. When asked about his back problem, he said that he was still kind of researching things and trying to figure out the course of action to correct things. So obviously he'll deal with the Vegas medical people, but he also wants to seek additional opinions, not only surgeons, but like other doctors that deal with back issues a lot, and other players that have dealt with similar issues. He said he's already talked to a few players. Some of them have been, veteran guys that have been around a while and have overcome back issues to really, prolong and extend their careers for quite a long time. So he wants to do that, and he's not going to rush into any kind of a procedure because he wants to make sure it's the right thing to do. Sounds to me, obviously, it's fair to say he didn't have any surgeries at all during the season, that he was basically trying to do rest and rehab as best he could with the Vegas medical team to try to contain whatever the flare-up of the issue in the back was, to try to come back and play. But it's still something you could tell Mark Stone was not near himself. He was not right when he was playing that last stretch of games of 15 games or whatever it was at the end of the year that he came back and played. Like, he hardly had any offensive output. In the games that I saw, he wasn't even much of a factor. I mean, they slowly built up his ice time when he came back and stuff, what you expect. But you can just tell Mark Stone is a major impact player. He's got a fantastic stick, causing turnovers, interceptions, defensive awareness, and of course, such a smart player offensively. And you could tell that it wasn't even so much anything to do mentally. It's just the physical. In my opinion, it was obvious. He was probably at best maybe 70%, and I'm not even sure that that's fair, because Mark Stone, even at 80-90%, would be a lot more effective than what we've seen out there. So the future of their captain on this long-term contract at, what's he making, over $9 million bucks? That's a big deal for them. Going to the start of the season or off season right now, not knowing the exact course of action for his back to get healthy and to get back is concerning. You have to think that you can't absolutely guarantee right now and say that Mark Stone's going to be 100% healthy when next season starts. You hope he will, but you don't know the course of action yet to correct the issue. So you can't say that with any kind of certainty. So, I mean, that could have a major factor, not only in their on-ice product, because it's not a guarantee he's going to be there, but also because of the LTIR and the cap situation that they're dealing with. May they maybe be slow to make moves here as they wait to find out more about Mark Stone, because we keep saying they're way over the cap. And, a lot of articles I've read are suggesting that either between Robin Leonard and Laurent Brossoit, at least one of those two goalies is likely going to get moved, maybe both. But they also confirm that they both need surgery, and trading players that are injured and, haven't played a lot is tough, right? So can they get those guys moved? I don't know. And there's also talk about either between Shea Theodore and Alec Martinez that one of them would be primed to be moved. There'd be a lot of interest in Shea Theodore. There's no doubt if they want to go down that road. I often wondered, after they signed Alex Pietrangelo, I'm surprised they've been able to work their cap run and keep Theodore so far, because that's a luxury that might just be becoming too much that they can't afford anymore. But if you have a $9 million contract that's going long-term injury reserve, if Stone's unable to continue, I'm not suggesting his career's done or anything like that. I'm just saying that based on the fact that they don't even know for sure what he's doing yet for recovery, let's say that they decided a month from now that he does need a surgery and he's not going to be ready to start the season, for example, that also means they don't necessarily need to rush into making moves to get themselves to be cap compliant, right? They can use the LTIR method. We know the owner's not afraid to spend money, so that's not an issue. So, but, you'd think, though, that, moving a goalie and a defenseman could be what they need. Of course, Evgeny Dodonov's name is another name too to watch for. They tried to trade him. And of course, they got rejected because of this no trade debacle there, which we know that won't be an issue next time. And, he came back after he came back to the team. He was hot there for a while, but then he cooled off too. So I still think with 1 year left and $5 million, they'll probably try to move him again. So I would think Dodonov and a defenseman and a goalie are all likely. We saw Logan Thompson prove that he's capable of playing NHL regular games now, so I would think he'll be one of the goalies, and he's on a 3-year. I think he has 3 years at like under $800,000. So that's a good contract to have for cap purposes, and if he can play like he did, that's going to be very valuable for them for the next few years too. So regardless, one of those goalies are going for sure, and you have to wonder about the relationship between Leonard and Vegas after how things were handled. So, could we go with a combo of Brossoit and Thompson next year and have cheap goaltending, but hopefully good results? Like, it's possible. And you throw a Dodonov in there. If they go down that road, if they move Leonard and Dodonov, they may not have to trade a guy like a Martinez or a Theodore or anybody on the back end. So hard to say what they do, but we know that Vegas is way over the cap. Will everybody be healthy? There's so many question marks facing this franchise. And as of we know right now, based on comments from Pete DeBoer, Kelly McCrimmon, and everybody else, there's bound to be some changes, but I'm not convinced they're going to be super drastic because of the fact that they believe in this group and they know that there's a ton of injuries and that played a big role. But Mark Stone also said that they need to work on their cohesiveness as a team as well. The fact that they've had so many bodies in and out of the lineup this year, that having that chemistry and a cohesiveness as a group and to be that tight group like they were a few years ago it's been a challenge. So if they can get back to that, that'll also have a major impact as well on where things go. So we will see, but Vegas is going to be a very interesting team to watch this offseason. Of course, to the next expansion team, the Seattle Kraken, came in obviously with a very different approach this year than we saw that what they did in Vegas. We know that there's bound to be a few changes there, as we talked about in the Seattle Kraken offseason video that was put out earlier today. I don't think we're going to see anything too drastic, but I do think we can see a good move or two out of them between a trade and free agency. The belief is they are wanting to become a little bit more of an offensive team, as they did struggle mightily to score goals this year on a consistent basis. So having somebody like a solid offensive defenseman to be able to run things on the back end. Of course, they had Mark Giordano at the start of the year, who kind of played a bit of that role, but he was traded at the deadline to the Leafs on an expiring contract. You had to think he probably wasn't going to play more than 1 year there anyway. I mean, they have a guy like Vince Dunn, but right now it doesn't look like Vince Dunn is, I'm not sure he's number one pair, top power play, ready to take that on. They need somebody who can work with them on that regard. And a guy like John Klingberg is heavily rumored to be on Seattle's radar for free agency. So that could be very well be something that we look out for. We know that he's likely leaving Dallas, that he's not going to be able to get paid what he feels he deserves, and based on his stats and performance, that he's going to be able to get paid. And the Kraken have a lot of flexibility and could use a guy like him. And as I also talked about, I wouldn't be surprised to see a goalie trade like a Chris Driedger or something to that effect to help bring in another forward, another guy who can score some goals, because that is something that they're drastically missing as well. If you can add a power play quarterback and a stabilizer like Klingberg back there and a nice one more top six type of forward, that would make a huge difference in that team moving forward as well. And also with the Islanders, I saw reports from Kevin Kurz and The Athletic looking at their top offseason priorities. And of course, it's always difficult to decipher what Lou Lamoriello is going to do. But he believes, and I would agree with him, that the top priority for this team in the offseason should be finding an offensive winger who can play with Matthew Barzal. Barzal's a key part of their future, who they're going to have to make a decision on here soon, and hopefully a long-term contract. But it only makes sense to do that, really. Like, you want to get not only Barzal figured out, but figure out who can play with them and kind of create at least a duo or a trio of long-term growth here that you can rely on to be more offensively gifted. And he believes they should be going after some of the top free agents if they get there. I mean, right now, guys like Johnny Gaudreau or Philip Forsberg would be your top options on the free agent market, but it's not 100% guarantee that they're even going to make it there. They very well could both end up in situations where they re-sign with their existing clubs. I think that the Flames are going to do everything in their power to keep Johnny Gaudreau, and I think it's a pretty decent possibility, at least based on what we had heard before, that the Predators were going to want to sign Forsberg. If they weren't confident they could sign him, I think they would have moved him ahead of the trade deadline, but nothing happened because they were confident they could get that done. But certainly there's other guys out there, but nobody to that magnitude. I mean, you get Gaudreau on a 100-point season, Forsberg on a 40-goal season. Either would be a phenomenal winger for Matthew Barzal. So we'll see what they do. But I mean, could they land one of those guys? Maybe. For one, they're going to have lots of competition if they make it to free agency. And number two, like I said, there's no guarantee they even make it there. So we'll see where that goes. In order to get some cap space, he also believes it's time for them to move on from Semyon Varlamov and give the net solely to Ilya Sorokin. Get some cap flexibility by moving that contract, getting a cheaper backup goaltender, which I certainly agree with as well. Sorokin proved time and time again that he certainly is ready for more action between the pipes and can handle that full-time starting role. But at the same time, I understand why they want to keep Varlamov around. One injury to one guy like that, and all of a sudden, boom, you're screwed if you don't have the depth in that position. But sometimes it's the luxury you can't afford to have when you got to, decide what part of your team you have to, adjust your depth at. And it's going to be hard to get that scoring depth if you keep the goaltending depth. And it's just a battle between the two, and what do you do in that regard. I also want to talk quickly on the Ottawa Senators. I mean, we do see reports here recently in the last few days from Bruce Garriock of the Ottawa Sun, where he actually explicitly used a couple of names and Garriock's well connected and well, I guess given lots of inside info from the Senators, which we know, and he loves to tout that compared to other Ottawa media. So if he's throwing names around in an article, then he's been tipped off by the organization that they are legit targets that they're very interested in. But he, of course, makes a top six forward in Ottawa being a top priority as well, which I fully expect to be the case too. And he expects them to be going after, assuming that he makes it there to free agency, Claude Giroux being a prime target to come home to Ottawa and to sign maybe 3-4 year contract to finish out his career. If he gets a cup in Florida, I think the odds are better. If he doesn't get a cup in Florida, then I don't know that he's going to want to go to Ottawa, who's a ways away from contending, where he might be able to chase a cup somewhere else first. I'm not sure. But the other option he mentions as a possibility based on trade talks that had happened earlier in the season was Kevin Fiala in Minnesota. Now, I know a lot of Wild fans have said that they cannot afford to lose Fiala after how he played in the second half. And it's going to be tough. I mean, I know Bill Guerin probably doesn't want to, but based on how negotiations have previously gone on a long-term contract extension, based on their cap situation, they are going to have to find ways to shed some money. And as much as they don't want to move Fiala, I'm sure that he's a player with enough value that they could get a good return for future assets that might be easier to do than trading like a Matt Dumba, for example. I don't know which way they're going to go. I understand Minnesota's desire to keep him, but those are apparently a couple of key targets for Ottawa as they approach this offseason. Pierre Dorion knows and has acknowledged here that they need some better veteran players to surround this young core if they're going to take some steps forward and have any chance at all at challenging for a playoff spot. Even if they don't make playoffs next year, they want to be in meaningful games late in the season and have the games in March and April be coming down to the wire to see if they can at least challenge for a spot at the very least. It's just tough to say who they will replace in the playoffs, given the big gap this year between the playoff teams and the non-playoff teams, unless we see a team greatly regress, which is hard to predict at this point in time. So let me know your thoughts on anything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.